Welcome to Timeless Tales. Subscribe for more content, and remember, we select our subscribers randomly every weekend to receive gifts like Apple Watches, iPhones, and many more. Don't be left out. In the heart of Abuja, where men drive cars that shine like gold under the sun, and the air smells of expensive perfume and new money, there lived a young man whose name people whispered with both fear and wonder. His houses stood like palaces. His clothes were stitched by hands from overseas. His shoes never touched mud. And when he walked into a room, silence followed him like a shadow. But one morning, in the crowded streets of Lagos, where downfall buses shout louder than the people, and smoke rises from roadside cooking pots, a stranger appeared. His feet were dusty. His shirt was torn near the shoulder. He looked tired. Quiet. He looked like someone forgotten. No one knew his name. But if they had known who he truly was, they would have cleared the road and bowed their heads. Because this was no beggar. This was the same man from Abuja. The one who once had everything. What happened to him? Why would a man with private jets and gold watches throw away his wealth and walk barefoot into a city that owed him nothing? The answer is simple. He was not cursed by spirits, but by love itself. And this is the story of how a man dressed in rags to find a woman who would not be fooled by riches. A man who lost everything, but found something deeper. This is the story of Deric, the man who pretended to be poor to find someone who truly loved him. They called him Deric, son of Chief Oladile, the oil tycoon whose name opened doors in every corner of Abuja. From the time he was a boy, Deric did not just sit on wealth, he worked for more. While other rich children spent their days enjoying the comfort their fathers built, Deric studied. He built small businesses in school. He bought land when others were buying phones. He was smart, sharp, and above all, he was focused. By the time he turned 30, his name was already known beyond the city. He had buildings in Maitama, shares in companies in London. His friends called him the Golden Lion of Abuja. And yet, with all he had, there was one thing he did not own: love. When Deric was still growing, before his name sat on newspaper covers, there was a woman named Amara. She was the one he had chosen. The one he believed would walk beside him, rich or poor. She came from a humble family, with soft eyes and a voice that always reminded him of Comrain. He gave her everything. Time. Gift. Promises. And a heart untouched by the pride that wealth often brings. But when the money began to come, when Deric started rising and the scent of his success began to spread, Amara changed. She became distant. Cold. Her laughter now only returned when gifts arrived in boxes. She started comparing him to other men. And one day, without warning, she left. She said nothing. But the city spoke. She had chosen another, a man older, fatter, already rich, with a house by the water and cars that sparkled like mirrors. That day broke something in Deric. He stopped trusting smiles. He stopped believing soft words. He began to see women not as partners, but as people who waited at the end of success like vultures waiting for meat. His friends tried to cheer him, but they could not reach his heart. He grew bitter, not with anger, but with silence. He kept working. Kept building. But each time a woman laughed near him, he wondered, would she laugh if I had nothing? Yet deep inside him, the old longing remained. He wanted a wife. Not a woman who came for his name or for the keys to his house. He wanted someone who would sit beside him if his wallet held only dust. Someone who would walk with him, not behind his car, but beside his footsteps. So one night, as the rain tapped on the glass of his mansion and the walls stood tall around his loneliness, Deric made a decision. A strange one. A risky one. If wealth brought lies, then maybe poverty would bring truth. That night, while others in the city were sleeping under fans and cool sheets, Deric sat alone. The lights in his mansion were still on, but his heart was dark. He looked around at everything he had: tall ceilings, soft chairs, golden plates, but none of it filled him. The silence in his house was heavy. The kind of silence that money could not chase away. As the wind pushed against the windows and the trees whispered outside, something stirred in his spirit. A thought, like a voice inside him, clear and firm: if love is real, she must choose me when I have nothing. He stood up. Slowly. As if led by something greater than himself. He walked into his bathroom and stared at the mirror. The face that looked back was clean, proud, and respected by the world. But it was also guarded. Tired. Wounded. With steady hands, he took his razor and began to shave. His beard fell into the sink like dry leaves. Piece by piece, the image of the rich man disappeared. When he stepped out again, even the walls of the house seemed confused. He looked smaller, but freer. He did not call his driver. He did not pack boxes. Instead, he found an old black bag in the storeroom. Into it, he placed only 3 shirts, 1 trouser, slippers, a toothbrush, and 10,000 Nigerian nairas, all the money he would allow himself to carry. No ATM. No phone that shouted wealth. No watch that could be noticed. Before sunrise, Deric locked the door of his mansion, dropped the keys with the gatekeeper without a word, and walked out into the morning like any other man. At the motor park, no one knew who he was. No one looked twice. He bought a ticket for the next bus heading to Lagos, a shaky, overcrowded bus with broken windows and faded seats. He sat quietly at the back. Chickens in cages cried near his feet. A baby on the next seat would not stop crying. The road was rough, the journey long. But Deric did not complain. As the city of Abuja disappeared behind him, he made a promise in his heart. He would not speak of his name. He would not talk about the life he left behind. He would become a simple man. A poor man. A forgotten man. Only then would he see what kind of heart a woman carried. And only then would he know who could truly love him. The bus rode into Lagos just as the sun began to rise, red and heavy in the sky. The air was thick with smoke and sweat. The noise came from all corners, hawkers shouting, buses honking, voices clashing. The ground shook not with war, but with movement. People rushed, pushed, argued, and laughed, all at once. This was Ajij, a place where dreams walk on broken glass and hope must shout to be heard. Deric stepped down, holding his small bag close. His fine skin, once protected by air conditioners and tinted glass, now felt the heat like fire. He walked through the streets, looking for a place to stay, but his feet did not lead him to hotels. He passed them all. He went deeper, where zinc roofs covered rooms too small for 2 people, where wooden doors had no locks, and water came in buckets, not pipes. He found a tiny room behind a worn-out building. The walls had holes. The ceiling groaned when the wind blew. The toilet was behind the house, shared by all the tenants, and sometimes the flies. He paid for 1 month in cash. No one asked his name. The landlord simply called him Abuja boy because of his accent and the calm in his eyes. It was a name that stuck. In the morning, Deric began walking to Computer Village, where phones were sold like groundnuts and everyone claimed to be a repairer. He found a small corner and sat on a wooden stool. A man gave him old phone casings to sell for a share of the profit. No one knew that the hands touching dust-covered screens once signed deals worth millions. He worked from sun up till sundown, speaking little. People noticed him, but not with respect. Some laughed behind his back. Some said he was too proud. Some said he must have failed in Abuja and run to Lagos to start over. But Deric said nothing. He just watched. He watched how women passed by. He watched how they looked at shoes first, then at shirts, then at wrists for watches. He saw how they smiled at those with clean clothes and new phones. He saw how they turned their heads from men who carried plastic bags or wore torn sandals. Sometimes a lady would stop by, ask him a question, and when she saw his cheap phone, she would walk away mid-sentence. He did not cry. He did not curse. He just watched. He had become invisible, and in that invisibility, he began to see the world clearer. What money once hid, poverty now showed. And so he waited, not for gold or praise, but for truth to walk past his store. Days turned into weeks, and Deric's life in Lagos settled into a hard rhythm. He woke early, fetched water with a bucket, swept his tiny room, and walked the long road to Computer Village. His slippers wore thin. His shirts lost their color. Dust clung to his trousers like a second skin. His hands, once soft from office air and untouched by hard labor, grew rough with work and sun. But it was not the struggle that pained him, it was the way people looked at him now. Especially the women. Girls passed him every day. They saw his shoes, cracked and tired. They looked at his second-hand shirts, faded and too big. Some whispered, some laughed openly. One day, a girl passed by with her friends, pointed at him, and said loud enough for others to hear, "If I ever marry that one, call me mad." The girls around her burst into laughter, shaking their heads like they had escaped a curse. There were others who pretended to be kind. They smiled, greeted him sweetly, asked for small money for food or airtime. Deric gave, sometimes, just to see. But once they got what they wanted, they vanished. No thank you. No return. Only silence. He began to understand what he had never seen before. Money had covered many faces in sweetness, but now that he had removed the gold from his skin, the truth stared back at him. Many smiles were only painted, not planted. Many eyes only saw pockets, not people. Each evening, he sat alone by the roadside, eating plain rice or nothing at all. The city moved around him, busy and blind. He was just another poor man now. Another voice in the crowd. And still, he waited. Then one day, something different happened. As he arranged the broken phones on the wooden tray, a girl walked past. She was carrying a basket filled with akara and pap, her wrapper tied tight around her waist. She looked tired but strong. Her skin was dark and smooth like polished calabash. Her eyes sharp like one who had seen hardship but refused to bow to it. She looked at Deric, not at his shoes, not at his clothes, but into his eyes. And she greeted him. A simple greeting. Like one human to another. No laughter. No request. No mocking. Deric nodded slowly, almost surprised. The greeting was short, but something in it stayed with him long after she was gone. It was not love. But it was respect. Something he had not tasted in many days. And for the first time in a long while, Deric felt seen again. Not as a rich man. Not as a beggar. Just as a man. Her name was Lara. Born and raised in Lagos, though the world had not been kind to her. Her parents died when she was still a child. Since then, her grandmother had taken her in, teaching her how to survive with small hands and a big heart. They lived in a one-room house with a leaking roof, but it was filled with peace. Lara did not complain. She woke up before the sun, helped her grandmother prepare akara, and by morning, she was already by the roadside, selling beside the hot pan. Her hands were strong. Her eyes steady. She did not wear loud colors or walk like one trying to be noticed. But those who looked closely saw something in her dignity. The kind that does not come from what you wear, but from how you carry yourself. One evening, as Deric walks back from work with tired steps and an empty stomach, he passed her stand again. She was packing up, her face wet from the heat of the fire, but her smile still soft. She saw him, paused for a moment, then reached into her tray and handed him 2 hot pieces of akara without asking for money. She said no sweet words, no teasing. Only a quiet line, "You look like someone who's lost, not lazy." Deric took the food. He wanted to speak, to ask her why. But she had already turned back to her work. That night, he ate slowly, the taste of kindness sharper than the pepper in the food. It stayed with him, not in his mouth, but in his chest. From that day on, he began walking past her stand every evening. Not to beg. Not to flirt. Just to pass and greet. And she greeted him too, calmly, like someone who was not in a hurry to know a man's story, but still cared that he was alive. She never painted her face. She never asked him where he was going or where he had been. But when she looked at him, Deric felt clean, not rich, not poor, just seen and accepted. She prayed before starting her day. She helped her neighbors even when she had little. She sat on a wooden stool beside her pan, singing softly as the oil popped and danced. Deric watched her from a distance. And slowly, without plan or warning, his heart began to lean. Not because she was the most beautiful girl in Lagos. But because she was the first person in a long time who treated him like a human being, without fear or favor. And for a man who had lost faith in hearts, Lara's presence was like rain on dry ground. The days turned, and what started as quiet greetings became small moments shared under the Lagos sun. One evening, the sky broke open and rain fell hard, pounding the zinc roofs and flooding the streets. Most sellers ran, packing their goods and fleeing the cold water. But Lara stayed. Her akara still in the oil, her eyes watching the dark clouds without fear. Deric, soaked from head to toe, ran to her stand and helped her cover the tray. Together they lifted the pan and pot, rushed to a corner shop, and waited out the rain. She did not ask for help. He did not wait to be told. They sat beside each other, wet and cold, but in that small corner, something warm began to grow between them. After that day, they started spending more time together. In the evenings, after work, Deric would buy ingredients with the little money he earned. Lara would smile and show him how to stretch 500 Nigerian nairas into soup that could feed 3 people. She knew where to get the cheapest pepper, how to use crayfish instead of meat, how to turn small things into something good. He watched her hands move, quick and sure, like someone who had learned how to make life bend without breaking. They laughed sometimes. Not the loud, careless laugh of people who had no worries, but the quiet one, soft and deep. The kind of love that rises from shared pain and small joys. They argued too, but never about money. Never about what one had or did not have. If they fought, it was about things like how much pepper to use, or whether the girl needed more water. Deric began to notice small things. She would give her last akara to a hungry child. She would share her stool with an old woman. If someone knocked at her door for salt or matches, she would not turn them away. She had little, but she lived like someone who had more than enough. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sky grow dark, she spoke words that settled deep into his spirit. She said, "Even if you had nothing, I'd still respect you. God sees hearts." And in that moment, Deric knew. She did not know who he was. She did not care about shoes or phones or names written in gold. She looked at him like a person. She listened when he spoke. She smiled when he was silent. She prayed for him when he was sick, and fed him even when her own bowl was not full. He had set out to test the heart of a woman. And slowly, quietly, with no noise and no riches, love began to grow. Not the kind that dances in public or shines on camera, but the kind that takes root in secret, like a seed waiting for the right season. Love had entered Deric's heart, quiet and strong. He felt it in the way his steps slowed when passing her stand, in the way his thoughts returned to her voice even in silence. He did not dream of gold anymore, or houses, or cars. He dreamed of peace. And every picture of peace had Lara in it. But still, his old wounds remained. The memory of Amora, the woman who left him when riches were near, still lived in the back of his mind. He feared that even Lara, kind and simple as she was, might change if she ever knew the truth. His heart was filled with love, but his head was full of questions. So Deric, moved by fear and the need to be sure, decided to test the love he had found. One morning, he woke before the sun and held his chest. He breathed heavy, dragged his feet, and told the neighbors he was weak. He made his eyes low, his body thin, and his voice faint. In truth, he was strong. But he chose to pretend he was dying. Lara came quickly when she heard. She did not scream. She did not run. She sat by his side, holding his hand. She brought herbs from her grandmother's basket. She crushed leaves. She boiled water. She sang softly at night, her voice shaking but steady. When the local seller of drugs said the medicine cost more than she had, she went inside, took her best wrapper, a deep green cloth with golden patterns, the one she wore only on holidays, and sold it at the market. With the money, she bought the medicine. Day after day, she nursed him. She did not ask for help. She did not walk away. On one of those nights, when the candle had burned low and her eyes were heavy with no sleep, she sat beside him, thinking he was too weak to hear. And with tears sliding down her cheeks, she spoke in a voice only the darkness heard. She said, "If you leave, I won't have anyone left. But I'd still be grateful you came into my life." She wiped her face with her sleeve and held his hand tighter. That moment was heavy. Not with fear, but with truth. She loved him. Not for the hope of what he might become. Not for what he owned. She loved him even while thinking he was about to die, even when all he had left was breath. And as Deric lay still, pretending to be sick, his heart healed in a way it never had before. Because now he knew. Lara's love was not tied to wealth or strength. Her love stood like a tree in storm, not moving, even when the roots were shaken. The sickness passed, and soon after, Deric vanished. One morning, his bed was empty. The small bag he brought from Abuja was gone. The wooden stool he always sat on near the shop was left untouched. No one saw him leave. No one heard a sound. It was as if the wind had carried him away. Lara searched. She asked at the shop, walked through the streets, even waited by his old corner at Computer Village. But he never came. Each day her eyes searched the crowd, her ears listening for his footsteps. But silence answered her. Her heart grew heavy. The boy she had loved with no gold or title was gone. Some neighbors said maybe he had died. Others said he had run away, tired of poverty. But Lara said nothing. She only sat each evening beside her pan, frying akara with slow hands and eyes filled with quiet sorrow. A full week passed. The sky was dull and the air still when the sound of cars filled the street. Black SUVs, large and shining, rode in like clouds before rain. The noise stopped. People stepped out of shops. Children paused their play. It was rare to see such cars in this part of Lagos. The doors opened. From the middle car, a man stepped out. He was clean-shaven, his skin fresh like water after harmattan. He wore a royal blue agbada that flowed like river cloth, stitched with gold at the chest. On his wrist was a silver watch. Behind him were men in black, guards, tall and straight. The street fell silent. Mouths hung open. Then whispers rose like dust. Is that not the beggar? That's the Abuja boy. It's him. People could not believe it. The man they had mocked, the one with torn slippers and dusty shirts, was now standing before them like a prince. Lara stepped out slowly, confused by the noise. She looked up and saw him, Deric, no longer in rags, but dressed in glory. Her eyes widened. She stumbled forward. Her knees gave way. And before she could speak or cry or even smile, she fainted. The crowd rushed forward when Lara fell, but Deric moved faster. He bent down, lifted her head gently, and called her name with a voice full of care. She opened her eyes slowly. Her heart was beating fast. She looked again at the man before her, so clean, so proud, so far from the man she once fed by the roadside. Tears rose in her eyes before words could rise in her mouth. Deric held her hand and helped her sit up. Then he spoke, not loud, not proud, but soft, like one speaking from his soul. He said, I didn't lie to you. I only hid to find what I couldn't buy, truth. He stood, reached into his fine robe, and brought out a small cloth. It was old, worn, and smelled of smoke. It was the same wrapper she once used to cover her akara tray. The same cloth she had wrapped food in for him, back when he had nothing. Wrapped inside was a gold ring, simple, round, and shining like the morning sun. Before the crowd, in the same place where he once sat in dust and silence, Deric knelt down. He looked up at Lara, whose hands were shaking, whose face was wet with tears. Without long words, he placed the ring before her, still wrapped in that piece of love. And she nodded, unable to speak. She said yes with her tears. She said yes with her heart. And the people who once laughed now clapped. Some shouted. Some wept. But all stood in wonder. In the weeks that followed, Deric kept his promise. He built Lara a house, strong and wide, with space for her grandmother, for her dreams, and for their future. He built a school in her grandmother's name, so children who had little would have a place to grow, just as she had grown strong from love, not wealth. And when it was time for the wedding, they had 2 ceremonies. One in Abuja, among governors and kings. One in Lagos, among neighbors and those who once called him Beggar. Because both parts of his journey mattered. The gold and the dust. The riches and the road. And beside him, always, was the girl who chose him when he had nothing. The girl with dignity. The girl whose heart passed every test. After the wedding, the news spread like fire across the city. People whispered his name in shops and markets. The story of the man who dressed like a beggar to find true love moved from mouth to mouth, from Lagos to Abuja and beyond. Even those who once laughed now spoke his name with shame and wonder. The women who mocked him returned, dressed in new clothes, faces painted, voices sweet. Some said they were sorry. Some said they had always seen something special in him. Some pretended not to remember their own words. But it was too late. The door had closed. Deric saw them. He heard them. But he never looked back. His eyes stayed on Lara, the only one who saw him when the world saw nothing. Lara, now living in comfort, with helpers and drivers and gates that swung open to greet her, remained the same. She still rose early. She still gave to neighbors. She still wore her simple wrapper when she cooked, and she still sat with her grandmother to pray. Many women came to ask her how she found such a man. Some expected her to talk about charm or beauty. But she said nothing proud. She only smiled and said, kindness sees what money hides. She became a voice, not loud, but strong. A voice for girls who believed in honesty, who helped even when no one was watching, who stayed kind even when life was hard. She spoke at schools, at women's groups, in churches and mosques. Not with big words, but with truth. And the story, like a seed blown by the wind, settled in many hearts. Because now, people remembered something they had forgotten. True love is not found in perfume or phones. It is found in hunger, in hardship, and in how a heart treats what it cannot gain. That was the lesson. Simple, heavy, and true. And from that day, many began to ask not just who is rich, but who is kind. Not who shines, but who stays. Not what can be gained, but what can be given. So tell me, if a man came to you with dust on his feet and a scar in his smile, if he had no fine shoes, no perfume, no bright car, only quiet eyes and a humble heart. Would you look away? Or would you look deeper? Would you ask what he owns? Or would you ask how he treats those who have nothing? This was the journey of Deric, a man who had everything but needed one thing that money could not buy. He dressed in rags not to trick, but to test. He wanted to see love without lights. He wanted to know if the heart could speak louder than gold. And this was the story of Lara, a girl with nothing to offer but everything a soul could need. She gave respect, even when the world gave none. She gave food, even when her own bowl was half full. She gave love, even when the man she loved looked like a beggar. So now, what about you? Do you think Deric was right to test love this way? If you were Lara, would you have treated him the same? Would you see the man? Or only the money? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, click like so others can find it too. And don't forget to subscribe to Timeless Tales, where old wisdom lives in new words. We share true African stories, rich with meaning, full of lessons, and every weekend, we bless some of our subscribers with gifts like Apple Watches, iPhones, and more. Join the family. Share the stories. Because sometimes, one tale can change the way you see the world.